Welcome back, folks. Thanks for joining me here again on the channel. Last week we talked about shooting moving water and the different shutter speeds that you might want to use. Tonight we're going to go over all of the filters that I use to obtain those different shutter speeds. It's all about maximizing image quality, and for me that means using filters rather than stopping my lens down to f/16 or f/22 or even worse and starting to suffer from diffraction. Diffraction is where the edges of the image, all the way out on the outsides, like this, end up being a little soft, or a little fuzzy, or maybe a little stretched. And that's all about how light comes through the tiny opening in our lens. And at those really, really small apertures like f/16, f/22, f/28, you start to see what's called diffraction. So to avoid diffraction, I use filters. The first filter for me that is a must to have in your camera bag when shooting around moving water is a circular polarizer filter, often referred to as a CPL. The CPL I use is from Lee, and it is a square CPL. You can see, makes things a little bit darker. That's what I like about a CPL. It acts like a little bit of a neutral density filter. With this CPL filter, I get about 1.5 to 2 stops, give or take, of light reduction. So this is the first thing that goes on my lens every time I am starting to shoot some moving water. Whether or not I'm going to use the polarizing function or not, it always goes on. That way I have it there, I can use that function if I want it, and I get that added bonus of 1.5 to 2 stops of light cut out. The first benefit of a CPL filter is reducing glare on wet rocks. As you can see in this image on the left of a waterfall in North Carolina, those wet rocks are very bright and the highlights are competing with the water. The image on the right is with the CPL filter activated, and it makes that water stand out against those wet rocks, cutting out all of that glare that is so distracting in the image. In this particular scene, we are using the circular polarizer for 2 reasons. The first is to reduce the glare on the wet rocks in the foreground, and also to reduce the glare on the leaves and foliage in the background. Circular polarizers also mute that highlight and reflection on the shiny leaf surfaces, rendering them darker and more vibrant. And finally, one of my favorite reasons to use a circular polarizer is to cut the glare on water. As you can see in the image on the left, the water's surface is shiny and reflective, and it's blocking our view down into the water. But the image on the right, we can see through that glare. The circular polarizer has reduced all of that glare and reflection, and now we can see the stuff going on underneath the water's surface. And for me, that makes the image so much more interesting. These 3 images show why I find a circular polarizer to be an essential tool in a photographer's bag when shooting moving water. Now that we've gone over the use of a CPL filter, another critical piece of gear to have in my bag when I'm shooting creeks and waterfalls is neutral density filters. I carry a 2, 3, and 4 stop filter. That way when I pair them with the circular polarizer that gives me about 2 stops, I can have 4, 5, or 6 stops of light cut when I'm shooting in the streams and creeks. And I find that this combination of either one of these 3 filters and the circular polarizer always gets me to the target exposure and shutter speed that I'm looking for. In this image you can see that I started with a baseline of ISO 50, f11, and 1/5 of a second using only the CPL filter. I determined in the field that that wasn't a long enough exposure for me. So in the field I added a 2-stop neutral density filter to the CPL filter I already had, and that resulted in a 1.6 second exposure. for those doing the math, that's only one stop faster, or in this case, one stop slower. Yes, the original image was underexposed, but I did that to protect the highlights, and so I brought the rest of the exposure up by another stop in post-production. Not happy with 1.6 seconds exposure, I put the 2-stop filter back and grabbed the 3-stop filter, and that allowed me to get to a 3.2 second exposure, which suited my eye much more. I liked the texture in the water, I liked the motion in the water more, and so for this case, a 3-stop neutral density filter and a CPL filter was the right combination. And this is why I carry so many filters in so many different stops so close together. It allows me to fine-tune my exposure in the field. I tend to use the square filters because I like being able to have one ring for every lens diameter I have and one set of filters that I have to carry. I keep the filters in these handy plastic cases. That way they don't get broken if this falls out of my bag or if I'm fumbling with them. And I also write on it what the filter is, whether it's the 10-stop, the 6-stop, the 4, the 3, or the 2. And I do that so that I can quickly reference it in my bag and not have to take the filter out and try to read the etching that is right here on the top of the filter. I use the Formatt-Hitech Firecrest filters. I find that they are the most color neutral that I've been able to use, and I like that because it doesn't impart a color cast onto my images. So that covers the filters that I use when I'm shooting creeks and waterfalls. I'm going to put a link to all of these in the description of the video down below, and just know that none of these are sponsor-based placements. These are all my own personal equipment that I've purchased with my own money. These are not sponsored. The links that I'm putting down are not affiliate links. They are just links to a reputable photography equipment purchase place. I put that there just so that if you want to find where these come from or what they are, it makes it really easy. I don't get paid a dime for any of that. I'm just doing it out of the kindness of my own heart for those of you watching at home. Thanks for joining me for this session of Waterworks. Tune in next week when I start talking about exposure blending. Looking forward to seeing you come back next week. Thanks.